So a lot of my work is about the self, like I am my own muse, and I continue to use different versions of myself in these paintings. They kind of all look different, but they all represent me within a landscape.
So what are you working on like right now? What is your...
I just started this new sculpture. It's my hair. I cut my hair last night and I decided to keep it and use it for one of my head sculptures. Just kind of continuing my theme of a profile, in particular my profile, and kind of just having fun with it and letting the material do what it wants. You look good, girl. You look good. The work is fairly simple these days, but they're supposed to convey an emotion through color or through context even. Yeah, I think like my main themes are like landscapes and self-portraits. Go to museums, that's a big part of my practice, as well as keeping a library for myself. I'm like actively buying art books. To me, like I'm very interested in past artwork, and I will take things from certain works of art that I really like. So like that piece, for example, the landscape is a Matisse landscape,
Wow.
and then I just simplified it. So I don't have like the opportunity to be out in the woods as much. So I look at artists that have made a practice out of plein air painting and painting nature, and I basically will just steal their landscapes. So I work with the knowledge of art history, and I'm interested in using the landscape as representation of kind of the unknown. They're fairly barren landscapes. They don't really have a lot going on, and it represents this idea of not knowing what the future is going to hold. And I think a lot of young people have that fear.
Yeah, completely. Everything feels like it's coming to a close or something. Or...
Yeah, it's a confusing time. I think we don't really know where we're going. So these kind of all go together.
When did you make all of these? Or...
A couple months ago. Recently. If you forget or don't know what to paint, just when in doubt, paint yourself. That's usually what I do. It's kind of like my go-to when it comes to my work. It's another self-portrait. When I used to smoke.
Did you stop smoking?
I did. Yeah, it's kind of just like a lost head. I think I've been making art since I was a kid. My dad is an artist. So he always would support me and push me to make art, and would always bring me like used paints and old paintbrushes that he'd find at like thrift stores and surprise me with them. You can always paint over it. That's what I do. I recycle paintings that I don't like. Like those two canvases right there have like at least 3 underpaintings.
Really?
Yeah. And you know, it might get painted over again. Sometimes I'll just take the canvas off and then restretch it, or I'll just paint over it again.
Is that something you've like always done since you were little?
I mean, yeah, because I grew up basically like going to secondhand stores all the time, and that was like thrifting was a big part of my childhood, going to flea markets with my dad every week. So from a young age, I was instilled to always never take more than you need, and you could always find a better deal.
That's amazing.
Another thing. That was
always find a better deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. That's just like the way it is to be an artist in New York. I recently started to introduce a second figure when I got into a relationship. It was basically adding, because although everything is about myself, once I went into a relationship, I started painting that as well. That painting right there, this one is it's supposed to be the feeling of love. That's what that one is based off of. And I've been using these kind of like kissing figures more recently. I'm really interested in like the embrace, and these they're not really supposed to have a sex, they're not gendered, it can be whatever race, but it's mostly about the movement of a kiss and the embrace of a kiss, and why I think that is like a beautiful, defiant act that one can do, but it's also very sacred and special and, worth making art about, though you see that a lot in art. The couple is a huge theme in art, and so is love, and if you looked at the kiss painting, you would get like 500,000 paintings titled that, but I'm just going to throw my paintings in there as well because they're also titled The Kiss. So are some of my sculptures. Yeah, I think that's kind of like what I've been doing most recently, is adding in this second figure.
Yeah, can you talk more about your sculpture practice or where that started?
I was a sculpture major in college, and it took a while for me to figure out what materials I wanted to use, but I knew I was mostly interested in like materials that were fast acting or fast drying. So I was able to finish a piece in a day or two. I really liked being able to build with my hands, but I didn't have enough time to do clay or the resources. So I found that paper mache and plaster mixed together worked as a clay substitute. So that's kind of mostly what I tend to use, are these like industrial materials.
Damn, it's really cool.
Yeah.
It's plaster
and paper mache basically mixed together. So it's a little bit stronger and it has more of a smooth finish. So the mix together is really nice and strong. I don't have to worry about anything breaking necessarily.
Like how much space you have and...
Oh yeah, definitely. I like to build big, but since moving to New York and being out of school, you don't really have the resources or the space to do so you kind of just have to make it work. I finally graduated from a bedroom studio to a living room studio, which is big for me. I made actually more work when I was working in my bedroom. I would just like flip the mattress up and just go in, like half the room was my clothes and the other half was the art, and it was always such a small bedroom, but I would just fall asleep looking at the work, and I would wake up looking at the work, and I think that's really helped me with continuing the practice. So it used to bust out like a painting every week, but I've definitely slowed down, and that's okay. I don't feel guilt about it or anything like that, because this isn't a cheap profession and I don't want to waste anything. Really make the right decisions when you're starting a painting. So you have to think a little bit more. I can't be so much of an improvise because ultimately you can just waste everything that you've been working on. That one over there is New York Love. I'm pretty sure that's what I titled it. This is the west and the east side, Central Park in the center. It's very dark. So this was the first painting I did when I switched my color palette. I previously was doing pink and red, black, like very bright palette was inviting too much of a positive vibe to the paintings, even though they weren't that positive, or not meant to be seen as positive. So I decided to go into a more somber color palette, more natural and earthy, and kind of invite this feeling, sensual feeling, but a very like private, and almost like a little scary. Like some of these color palettes are a little doomsday vibe. Which one?
The
Bodybuilder? Yeah, I was doing bodybuilders for a little bit.
What did they mean to you?
Well, I think why I was so fascinated with them is because I was interested in this depiction of strong women, like to the extreme. And I was juxtaposing them at the time with butterflies because they also represented women to a certain extent, and that was the complete opposite of like a fragile woman. So they were usually placed together within the art, but just kind of like hyper sexualized in both ways. Like if you think about like fairies, for example, they're just women with butterfly wings. But they're always so like hypersexual, and then the bodybuilders are in like bikinis, and I mean it definitely fascinated me, and I'm interested in graphic novels. If you take one corner of a graphic novel and you blow it up, it's a beautiful painting. This one's a little sad and kind of creepy to me. It's definitely an object. Has its shadow. It says on my way, so this idea of like moving and having to get somewhere, basically like in a rush.
Why in a rush?
Why in a rush? Because I'm freaking over what we have now. I don't know. It just feels like there is a rush. Like we're on a time limit. The Earth is. We are, as individual people, we only live so long. The Earth is only going to live so long. Everything is, it feels like we're running out of time, and it's to a certain extent. So here's like me trying to get to the moon, which represents the mother in my work. And I always look at the moon and think about my mom. So, like, you see an effort, there's, like, an effort to get to it, but obviously won't be able to reach it. It's kind of sad and desperate. Not all of my work has figures, but it kind of has, like, similar lines, and this looks like that. Any badass woman painter is inspiration to me. Just figure out what you like and how you like to do it, and then work from there. That's kind of what I did. Everything in college I threw out, but I did learn how to use the materials, and I think that is what informs my art making today. I do feel like a sculptor painting, like not the opposite, or just a painter.
Right.
When I make work, I'm thinking of it as a sculptor, and often paint my own sculptures, and I'm not so interested in like the final result or even to say the brushstroke, but more the overall feeling of the object. You can get a little bit trapped in the painting box. There's too many rules.
Yeah.
There's just too many rules, and then it can end up limiting what you want to make or how you want to make it. Though I think it's important to learn the rules, I think it's just as important to break them.